Happy Easter. Happy Easter Monday, everybody. I hope that this is finding you well. So I was listening to a video that was by One for Israel that was referred to me by Harry Stark. And in this video, One for Israel drew my attention to something very interesting. If you look at the Jewish weekly readings, which I have in the jewishvirtuallibrary.org here, if you look at the Jewish weekly readings, you're going to notice that there are some missing weekly readings, some readings that are not present, and they just happen to be all of the Messianic, really important Messianic scriptures and from the prophets that included prophecies of Jesus, prophecies of the Messiah. For example, they pointed out Zechariah 9:9 is one of the missing passages. They pointed out a few other missing passages. And they even gave evidence that those passages might have been in the readings prior to all of this. So you can see right here, I've got the list of readings. I'm going to go through and show you some of the missing readings. So let's take a look at what we have here. So they drew my attention to the way that Jesus in Luke 4:14-30 read this passage from Isaiah 61:1-3. He read it in the temple, and when he read it, he said that it had been fulfilled that day. So what does it say? It says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and the opening of the prison to those who are bound, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, to grant those who mourn in Zion, to give them a beautiful headdress instead of ashes," etc. So anyway, what we have here is this passage was read by Jesus. It's likely it was included in his time as one of the regular weekly readings. But right now, all of the passages that I'm going to read to you have been excluded. They've been taken out, or either they've been taken out or they were never put in. But I suspect that these messianic passages had been included. According to One for Israel, there seems to be some evidence that that could have happened. Now, let's go over some of the really interesting ones. I want to say hi to Slam RN. So what's interesting about this is the weekly Torah readings that I just showed you. A lot of times they'll skip right around the passage and they'll read all of the verses right around the passage. That's especially true of Isaiah 52 and 53. They read all around the passages and exclude the one that's really important. So let's take a look. We're going to comment on this too. Isaiah 7:14. So Isaiah 7:14, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son and shall call his name Emmanuel." I also watched another video by One for Israel about the word virgin, Alma, and they found evidence within the Bible that Alma would mean a very young woman who is also a virgin. There's another word that's out of Hebrew that can be used to refer to a virgin as well, but the woman in that case didn't necessarily need to be very young. You can notice the Greek translation that was around in the Septuagint around Jesus' time, Parthenos, also referred to a virgin. And so that's a pretty important passage that some people have said that Alma does not mean virgin, but it wouldn't be strange or necessarily prophetic or necessarily significant if just a young woman conceives. But it says she shall conceive and bear a son, and they compare this to a passage in Isaiah 54 that also talked about the conception. She's going to get pregnant. So the idea is in this is that it would not be unusual if just a young woman were to conceive. That's not something that would be strange. That's what we would expect. But a virgin conceiving, however, that is unusual. Micah 5:2 is also excluded from the readings, the weekly readings. So over the 52-week year, it says, "But you, O Bethlehem." So we were told where Jesus was going to come from. Micah 5:2 is a pretty important one, excluded. So Isaiah 40:3, also excluded. Now this is, of course, referring to John the Baptist. "A voice cries in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God." And of course, we know John the Baptist was that voice in the wilderness. And this is excluded from the readings. I think it's kind of sad that these are all excluded from the readings because I think they could open people's eyes to the truth of Christianity. The entire book of Daniel is excluded from the weekly readings. The entire book. There's not anything. In fact, he was referred to by Josephus and Jesus and others as the prophet, but apparently his status as a prophet was sort of given a demotion in early times after Jesus came. And so what's excluded, for example, are like the 77s in Daniel 9:24-27, really important passages that give us the timing of when the anointed one would be cut off. Okay, very important, because you can figure it out. It had to be between the years 457 and 444 BC to be consistent with when the timing would be. So it had to be 77s less 7, or 483 years after that window of time when they were rebuilding Jerusalem. And so the calls had gone out at that time to rebuild Jerusalem. So again, that brings us right up to the year 33 when Jesus was cut off. Okay, so this is excluded. So from the weekly readings, it's really kind of sad. Also, the stuff about Antiochus Epiphanes is excluded. The information about the 4 kingdoms is excluded. I'm just pointing out some really significant things that are in the book of Daniel that is not even read during these weekly readings. So the 4 kingdoms included Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece. Those were the named ones. And then the 4th kingdom, where the Messiah was going to come from. And his kingdom would last forever. So Jesus' kingdom, of course, is lasting forever. And yeah, very good point. Susan says, why would a prophet proclaim the birth from a young woman? That would not be newsworthy. But a virgin giving birth is. Exactly. It doesn't even make sense to say it's just a plain young woman. And according to One for Israel, these are 2 Jewish people with PhDs, they're doctors, and they told us that they believe that the word translates to young virgin. Okay, the original Hebrew translation, he said, might be different from the modern Hebrew translation. So in Daniel 7, this is also not included. Daniel 7:13-14. I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a son of man, and he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom, one that shall not be destroyed. You can compare that to what Jesus said when he was being tried in Mark 14:60-62. And you will see the Son of Man, the Son of the Mighty One, coming in the clouds of heaven and sitting at the right hand of the Father. That, of course, also goes to Psalm 110. In fact, none of the Psalms are read either. Psalm 22, that says his hands and his feet were going to be pierced. That is notably missing. No mention of any Psalms, and no mentions of anything from the book of Daniel. So we've got some pretty significant things, including a very pointed passage that refers to Antiochus Epiphanes. So we've got a lot of stuff that was mentioned in Daniel and unfortunately not included in the weekly readings. Malachi 3:1, also missing. They read right around Malachi, but they don't include 3:1. He says, behold, I send my messenger, and he will prepare the way before me. And the Lord whom you seek will suddenly come to his temple. And the messenger of the covenant in whom you delight, behold, he is coming, says the Lord of hosts. Now, let's know that that was during the period of the Second Temple. The Second Temple was destroyed in the year 70. So we know the Lord had to come prior to the year 70. Dr. Michael Brown thinks this is a really significant passage. And of course, it's not included. It's a problem. Also, what else isn't included? Isaiah 52, these verses 13-15. Behold, my servant shall act wisely. He shall be high and lifted up and shall be exalted. As many were astonished at you, his appearance was so marred beyond human semblance, and his form beyond that of the children of mankind. So shall he sprinkle many nations. Kings shall shut their mouths because of him. For that which has not been told them they see, and that which they have not heard they understand. And then, of course, we got Isaiah. Read the whole Isaiah 53. The entire thing's, of course, missing. But it says, but he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace. And with his wounds, we are healed. I also heard Bishop Robert Barron say something super interesting about the Shroud of Turin. Now, you'll recall that in the Shroud of Turin, there were many, many pieces of evidence of blood marks, and it looked like Jesus was whipped quite a few times all over his body, front and back. His beard had been torn. Also, that was predicted in Isaiah. A lot of other things. But one thing that Bishop Barron pointed out that I hadn't really thought about was when John and Peter arrived, they made a mention of the face cloth, the sudarium, how that had been folded really neatly, and also how the shroud itself had also been folded very neatly. And think about it, if someone actually broke open the cave and stole the body, you think they would actually neatly fold up the shroud? No, I don't think they would neatly fold up the shroud, but I think that Jesus probably neatly folded up the shroud, knowing that it has evidence of him on it. As you know, we've talked about this before, but the blood evidence from the face cloth and the shroud match, AB, and that is pretty neat. Also in Isaiah 53, there's also a passage, Isaiah 53:11, where it says, he shall see the light. Now that he shall see the light is not always translated that way in the English translations, but it does go back to the Dead Sea Scrolls, that he shall see the light. The light part is this part that's sometimes not in there, but it is in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so that is a really fascinating thing. And so those were a few of the passages that I wanted to talk about, but I also wanted to give you guys a little bit of a nugget of something that I saw on Twitter. One of my friends in a direct message shared this one video with me that I think you're going to find fascinating. So I want to talk about this too. And it has to do with Richard Dawkins. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with Richard Dawkins, but let me somehow get this video. There we go. Okay. Okay, so let me see here. We are going to get, how do I stop that? I need to remove that. Okay, so I have to wear glasses because I was having a hard time seeing these little words on the screen. So I don't want to have a hard time seeing that anymore. So let me get to this. Okay, hopefully you guys can see this. Let me make sure you can see this. All right, we've got Richard Dawkins right here. Now, this is going to surprise you. Richard Dawkins, the author of God Delusion. What did he say? Wait till you hear this. This is going to surprise you.
And is being promoted instead. I do think that we are culturally a Christian country. I call myself a cultural Christian. I'm not a believer.
Did you hear that? Ayin Hirsi Ali also calls herself a cultural Christian. So Richard Dawkins is calling himself a cultural Christian. He realizes the great things that Christianity has brought to modern society, the idea of individual rights, property rights, equal justice before the law, all that kind of good stuff. So let's also hear what else he has to say. Now, he's also going to mention Muslim and the superiority of Christianity over the Islam faith.
But there's a distinction between being a believing Christian and being a cultural Christian. And so, you know, I love hymns and Christmas carols, and I sort of feel at home in the Christian ethos. I feel that we are a Christian country in that sense. It's true that statistically the number of people who actually believe in Christianity is going down, and I'm happy with that. But I would not be happy if, for example, we lost all our cathedrals and our beautiful parish churches. So I count myself a cultural Christian. I think it would matter if we substituted any alternative religion. That would be truly dreadful.
Well, which brings me to my supplementary point, which is that, as we know, church attendance is plummeting, but the erection of mosques across Europe, I think 6,000 are under construction, and there are many more, are being planned. So do you regard that as a problem? Do you think that?
Now, I just want to mention the percentage of people who are Muslim in Europe has increased dramatically in the recent years. I understand in the United Kingdom, I think it's around 9% of people in the United Kingdom are of the Muslim religion. And so let's see what Dawkins says about that.
That matters.
Yes, I do really. I mean, I have to choose my words carefully. I mean, if I had to choose between Christianity and Islam, I choose Christianity every single time. I mean, it seems to me to be a fundamentally decent religion. in a way that I think Islam is not.
I think you're going to have to explain why you say that, Professor Dawkins. Why is Islam fundamentally not decent like Christianity?
Yes, I mean, the way women are treated. I mean, Christianity is not great about that. It's had its problems with female vicars and female bishops and things.
Which I don't think that's, I think it's really interesting. I want to point out something about Richard Dawkins here, and also about Jesus. Who was the first person to discover that Jesus was going to be coming to the earth when he did? It was Mother Mary, right? The angel Gabriel appeared to Mother Mary and let him know that she was going to be with child. And she said, "How can this be, since I know not man?" And so, of course, the idea is she had taken a vow of virginity. And so it was explained to her how this can be. And so it was something pretty cool. So she was the first there. The women were also the first to discover Jesus at the empty tomb. So Mary Magdalene, all four gospels say that the women first discovered Jesus. So two very important things in the New Testament. Jesus gave women that special blessing of being the first to find out about his coming at the particular time he came. A virgin conceived, just as in Isaiah 7:14. And also we continue to find that out with the four women discovering the empty tomb. We also have women in very significant roles like Phoebe and Lydia and Esther. And so if you want to read some of the great roles that women have had in the Old and New Testament, pay special attention to that, because women are certainly given an important role in society. The reason why it's significant that the women were the first to discover the empty tomb is because at the time, women didn't have as much value as far as their testimony. So for women to be the first to discover that, they would have to somehow have corroboration from men. And so that was how it was. So here we go.
But there's an active hostility to women, which is promoted, I think, by the holy books of Islam. I'm not talking about individual Muslims, who, of course, are quite different. But the doctrines of Islam, the Hadith and the Quran, is fundamentally hostile to women, hostile to gays, and I find that I like to live in a culturally Christian country, although I do not believe a single word of the Christian faith. Well, I must say I was slightly horrified to hear that.
Okay, so anyway, I just thought you guys would like to listen to Richard Dawkins and to hear what he had to say. He's appreciating that he's a cultural Christian. Yeah, it's not so far off that one person can start as a cultural Christian and end up as a true Christian. So if he wants to go ahead and take a look at some of the New Testament, maybe give it a good read, I think there's a good chance that we would have a Christian on our hands, another Christian, another convert. We're always willing to open it up. And so that's pretty important stuff to think about. And so I want to say hi to everybody in the chat. So I've got Nathaniel Robinson, Susan Slam RN. So it's great to see you guys. A lot of OT verses. I'll just, to wrap up, it was Isaiah 40. We talked about John the Baptist, Isaiah 53, 52, Daniel 7, Daniel 9, Psalm 22. None of the Psalms are mentioned. So Psalm 110, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand and I'll make your enemies your footstool. That's pretty important to also mention, because there was a duality of God. The Lord, you have King David saying, the Lord said to my Lord. Okay, the Lord in all caps, that's the Father, said to my Lord. Now, who would be a king's Lord? The second Lord, if not the Jesus. So, of course, Psalm 110 is what Jesus asked the Pharisees to explain, and they couldn't, because they realized, wait a second, what is this? The Lord said to my Lord. So that is another thing that we see, the duality, the two gods, the two persons. So we have something like that that's pretty significant. Psalm 22 is not mentioned, where his hands and his feet were pierced. Zechariah 9:9, Zechariah 12:10, Daniel, the entire book of Daniel is excluded. So Daniel's got all kinds of references. And so Malachi 3:1, Micah 5:2, again, all excluded. And so, yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff. It's great to see people coming to Christianity or coming to appreciate Christianity around them, realizing all of the benefits we get from living in a culture of with Christian beliefs. And the primary idea, love the Lord above yourself and love your neighbors as yourselves. Really, really important stuff. The Christian values, the Judeo-Christian values are wonderful. That also speaks to our 10 commandments. So just to contrast our 10 commandments and the whole idea of communism, because I'm an anti-com, one of the things you're going to notice is it violates just about every one of the 10 commandments. They don't want you worshiping God. They want you worshiping them as gods, especially in the version like in North Korea. You've got Kim Jong-un, who wants to be your God and have his picture all over your walls. He wants that kind of a thing. They also, they killed, they stealed, they covet their neighbor's goods, they take their neighbor's goods, they do everything they're not supposed to do, pretty much violating just about every one of the 10 commandments. They exalt the idea of ugly art. You know, that's another thing that Christianity's ushered in, that kind of Richard Dawkins has been alluding to, this idea of the beautiful cathedrals and all of the other beauty that Christianity has brought in. Communists like the ugly. They're a little different that way. And so that's what it is. It is what it is. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video today. I just wanted to make a quickie. Please like, subscribe if you like this kind of content. And just remember, whether you eat, drink, or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Thank you so much, everybody.